Good morning. This is Rich Morrison, and welcome to my latest edition of the Thinking Cap, where today we're going to talk about Enhanced Coverage Option, ECO, for 2024. Why I think ECO is a big deal this year. Number one, we're looking at trying to help producers cover cost of production, and this might be a tool that's subsidized by the government at a pretty high level that's going to give producers that extra coverage to allow them to do that. ECO, this is, I think, the fourth year we've had it. ECO is a county-based product that covers from 86% up to 90 or 95%. So let's dig into ECO here this morning. Some of the details about it. ECO is a county-based product. It's especially good for producers that have yield history that tends to be better or at least as good as the county. It's 95% coverage. It's the highest subsidized coverage available right now. It and margin protection in the fall. There are several independent 95% products out there. They're not subsidized. This one's subsidized by the government. They want producers to add this higher level of coverage to help be able to cover their costs. It only takes a 5% loss in revenue, whether that's a price drop, a yield drop, or a combination to start to trigger an indemnity. Producers have to purchase an individual policy. We get that. Most of us are all going to buy an RP policy anyway. And ECO is not impacted by your PLC ARC decision, which I've talked a lot about this winter, that a lot of producers may look at the ARC program for corn and soybeans rather than SCO. However, ECO stacks above that, and that's what this graphic shows right here. This shows how your pieces fit together. Your revenue protection policy in the blue, then that next band of coverage is SCO or ARC. This year on corn and probably on soybeans, I would favor signing up for the ARC program. Save yourself a little bit of money there and maybe utilize that money to get that higher trigger up to 95% using ECO. Few of the indemnity details that's expected and final yields are based on RMA data. We don't use NASS data anymore. We are using the crop insurance data. Therefore, final county yields don't get released until late spring after the production reporting deadline at the end of April. Indemnities are going to be impacted a little bit by your yields. Producers that have yields higher than the county average get paid a little more if there's an indemnity, and vice versa. ECO indemnities and individual indemnities, keep in mind, they're not connected. There could be a county loss and the county gets paid, but you don't have a loss on your farm, and vice versa. They're totally separate. Why are we looking at ECO so much this year? Well, this is from my market report letter last week. USDA came out on Friday with its baseline projections for the year. You can look at these columns on the far right for corn and soybeans. USDA projecting a drop in corn acres, 3.6 million less, but another 15 billion bushel corn crop, demand that does not reach that amount, and stocks building up maybe over 2.5 billion in the year ahead, and a lower average farm price. Same for soybeans. They're projecting almost 4 million acres more beans. We don't need to add 4 million acres of beans, but looks like that's going to be the plan this year. And with a decent yield, you're looking at 4.5 billion bushels of production. And the government thinks stocks will rise over 400 million. 9.9% stocks to usage ratio would be the highest we've been since 2019, and a lower average farm price. So looking at the charts today, the biggest reason I'm looking at ECO right now is price. Now, yield could certainly be a reason we trigger payments with ECO. This year, I think up in Minnesota, some neighboring states, we will get 5% county bushel losses, but price to me is the biggest reason. And if you look at where the price is at today, the market's been in a downswing. Now, the green line on here on the December 24 chart is where the current price average is for crop insurance, right around 470. Do you think price could go down to $4? Right now, March corn is below 420 on the board, nearby March futures. And so could next December do the same thing? I think it absolutely could. And if you look at the insurance price history, I've been using the phrase lately that, they say history doesn't repeat itself, but oftentimes it mirrors itself. or rhymes, excuse me. And that's kind of what we're seeing. We're rhyming a lot with what happened in the last decade, where we had a high price in 2012 and took at least 2 to 3 years before price went low enough to start planting less corn acres, and we started to increase export demand, especially. And I'm fearful that we're looking at a similar situation right now in 2024. For soybeans, similar situation. The prices have trended lower, but we are below the insurance price today. We're currently in the 1160s is where the average is right now for insurance. We're running almost 20 cents below that right now. And if you think bean price could continue to work lower like it did in the last decade, again, we seem to be rhyming with what happened in the last decade, where for 2 to 3 years we saw prices go down. The other big factor here in beans is South America. How are you going to get the Brazilians to quit growing more bean acres? We're going to have to take price down to make that happen. And so I'm fearful that price could continue to work lower in the year ahead. So if you haven't seen this tool yet, this is our indemnity worksheet for SCO and ECO. I want to take you through an example with ECO. ECO, let's say that the base price for crop insurance starts out at $4.70. Might end up being a little bit less than that. Let's say the price in the fall goes down to $4. That's the average price during the month of October. The one thing we get to do to start out with, and I mentioned this earlier, we get to calculate your dollars based on how high your APH is. Now, for this sake, I'm going to use the same number I did for the county. I'm going to say that the producer APH is 220 bushels. So we use the higher price times that. That means the crop value is $1,034. If we buy the 95%, that gives us a 9% band. And that 9% band is worth 9% times 1,034 or $93 an acre. We get to buy, and we'll look at an example here in a minute with less than that, but we can buy anywhere from 50% to 100% dollars of that band. So which means if there's a loss, you get paid 100%, which would be 93.06. Let's say in the fall, we do our calculations, price goes down to $4 corn. So the revenue in the county goes to 880. We ended up less than 86%. The calculator stops it at 86. We ended up with less than 86% of our expected revenue. So we end up collecting on that entire band. That 100% is 93.06. So to me, this product acts like a put option in this example. Yield was unchanged, but because the price of corn went down 70 cents a bushel, I'm going to collect $93. If you're not doing this, if you're just doing, say, 80, 85% RP coverage, we didn't have a big enough drop in price to trigger a payment, and you're stuck with $4 corn. At least in this case, the producer is going to get a check back for $93. Now, that was one example. The matrix, which is attached to that worksheet, shows you 100 and some examples. And so you can look here. At 200 bushel corn, you can see at 435, you're starting to get back $24 an acre. I should have done a little bit of math in between, but probably up around 440, 445, you're actually starting to get a little money back. And we're not that far away from that right now. Again, it only takes a 5% loss in revenue. So you can see here, if bushels fall and the price goes up, you have the harvest price option built in. So you get paid higher. And if you have a great county yield, price can still drop down in the low fours and still be triggered a payment. So again, that 95% trigger is what's important. Now, there is an alternative for the producers that say that's too much money. I don't want to spend that kind of premium, but I want to have that 95% trigger. One of the unique features about ECO is you can buy down your dollars of coverage. And in this case, you can buy in 1% increments from 100% down to 50%. For every percent down, you pay that much, you get paid that much less indemnity if there's a payout, but you pay that much less in premium. So you could save half the premium by buying it down to 50%, still have the 95% trigger, but you get paid half the indemnity if there's a payout. So let's look at that example. Same exact set of numbers I just showed you, except we lower this with this slide bar down to 50%. Which now means that my 9% band of coverage is worth 46.53 instead of 93.06. We do the same math, we come up with the same loss, we still get 100%, but 100% of 46.53. So we paid less in premium, half the premium, but we get paid less in an indemnity situation. But if you look at our producer profitability matrix and plug this in, I think this is a unique thing about this product is that you can still get that 95% trigger. Why do I like this? I like it as a put option again, as I said earlier. Now, a lot of people will look at this and say, I get paid 50% of the dollars on all of my acres. I look at it as saying I get paid all of the dollars on 50% of my acres. And if I'm looking at this like a put option, I'm looking at it like I'm buying this on, in this case here, 50% of my corn bushels or 50% of my acres. So to me, I'm buying puts to cover half my crop. The other half of my crop, I'm still hopeful that I'm going to get forward sales made and be able to market 50% ahead of time. And to me, that's a good strategy for the year. If I can forward sell 50%, buy the ECO as a put on 50%, now I've got a floor at least on 100% of my crop. And if we go to $4 corn, I'm at least going to be able to survive and make some money. Whereas if I didn't do anything at all, then we're kind of up against the 8 ball. So that's what I like for this year. And again, the matrix looks exactly the same. It's just the numbers are cut in half. So now is the time. Sit down, figure out what individual coverage do I want? Do I sign up for the ARC program, which I think makes sense, especially for corn and soybeans, and then take a look at the ECO this year up at that 95% trigger. So if you've got any questions, feel free to shoot me a note, give me a call. I'll be happy to talk with you about it. Thanks for listening to the Thinking Cap this week, and hope you have a great week ahead.